Welcome back to another episode of Choose Africa. I'm your host, Valerie Bowden. This is a solo episode today because I want to talk about one of our new clients who has had phenomenal results in only his first 3 weeks of working with Cradle. He has gotten 25 qualified leads, which is amazing. And his closer is closing them, and they are making, honestly, a lot of money from these SDRs that they hired from Cradle. So I want to break down why he is doing so well, because it's not luck. He was very smart in the way he set this team up and how he's working with them. So let me dive in and just share. So this is a client we got connected to, and he is B2B. He helps businesses with their marketing. And he came to us saying, I'm so sick of sales agents. He said, I have to pay $85,000 a year for a sales rep to make calls for me. They don't want to make a lot of calls. They complain about it the whole time. Plus, I have to pay them a high commission, and it doesn't make sense. I just can't afford it. And so I told him, you need to be hiring from us then. It does not make sense ever to have a US sales rep doing cold calling, because cold calling is a volume game. So you don't want someone with a US salary to do it. You want the US salary person to be the closer or the account executive. But when it comes to cold calling, you do want to utilize offshore reps. So he was like, okay, I'm not sure, but set me up with an interview and I'm going to meet some of your candidates. We set up an interview. It was a group interview because he wanted a few reps. I think he met about 6 of our cold callers, and then he chose to hire 3 of them, which was really cool. So number one, what he did right was that he chose to interview. We do have some clients who will say, just pick for me. I trust you. And I don't like it because honestly, at the end of the day, your customer's best, your client's best. And so you should be picking out your team members. We advise for everyone to do that. Because when it comes to cold calling, there's so many different kinds of voices. It's not just about the accent, because that's always a guarantee that you need a 9 or a 10 out of 10 when it comes to accent. But I say sales bro. I don't know if that's offensive to anyone, but you know what I'm talking about? Like that typical sales guy who is, cursing sometimes during the cold calling, who's just loud and kind of a little bit pushy, but sometimes it works really well with the right kind of person. We have other clients who are in like the med tech industry, and they don't want that kind of sales personality. They want more of that, a little bit soft spoken, a little bit more compassionate sales. They really want someone who oftentimes is a woman who can just listen a little bit more, and that's how their sales typically close. So all of this to say there's different types of personalities and voices and tonality. And so what this client did well is that he chose to interview, and that's what you should always do. Okay, number 2 is that this client has invested in his team in terms of his time. Now, he didn't have any big onboarding or training process. We do have some clients who are larger, and they'll have PowerPoints and videos that are recorded, and they'll have like a week worth of training, which I love. Honestly, that's awesome. But this client didn't have anything. So his training was very informal. It was like, let's get on a Zoom call and I'll just kind of share a little bit about our industry and what you're doing and how things work. But what he did really, really well after that is every day he has mapped out an hour of his time to meet with his 3 SDRs. It's either him or one of his team members who are answering questions, helping them with objections, going over their numbers, providing more training to them. So I think this is week 4 with him. And he's been doing almost an hour every single day. And that has made all the difference. Now, that's not forever. That's not forever at all. Probably within a couple weeks, he'll probably phase that out and maybe do it once a week. Also, all of these calls can be recorded so that when he builds his team further, he doesn't have to keep doing that. But in the beginning, you have to spend time with your team members that you hire, whether that's offshore or not. We have clients who don't want to spend time with their cold callers. And let me tell you, they don't get as good of a results, because think about it. Your industry, your clients, your market, your demographics, all of that. It's so ingrained into you, and you need to invest some of that knowledge into your team so that they can do a better job calling, so that they can be more confident. So number 2, what this client did is that he maybe didn't have a fancy training, but he was willing to spend time with them and help them. Now, number three is this client had to pivot and to tweak. And let me just be honest, that happened within the first couple weeks. What happened was this client did not have a list. And so his cold callers were also doing the lead generation. However, they were saying, you know what? I'm getting on Apollo. I'm calling. These numbers aren't working. These emails are bouncing. Like, this is incorrect information. So they're spending their entire time calling people whose phone numbers don't work or aren't accurate, which again is why you don't want Americans doing this, right? Because you don't want someone with an American salary having this issue. Offshore talent is usually a little bit more affordable, and that makes things like this, when there are hiccups, a little bit more easier to overcome. So he did a few things once he realized this list wasn't working. One is that one of his friends gave him the tip that when you're using Apollo and you're downloading a list from it, make sure you're only using qualified. I think it's called qualified emails. It means like 100% verified emails. Automatically, that made such a big difference. So that way it did shorten their list, but then everybody that called or emailed was verified and it was a correct number. So that was massive. Because he had 3 SDRs, he also put one on his LinkedIn. I love LinkedIn. I think it's like fantastic tool. We get a lot of clients out of LinkedIn. So he did pivot one of his cold callers to help him with LinkedIn outreach, which I think is really smart, because some people you'll reach through LinkedIn. Some people you'll reach through your email list. Some people you'll reach through cold calling. Some people you'll reach on Instagram. That's kind of why you need to have like a multi-channel approach. And so it's good to spread out your cold callers in that way. And the last thing he did is, after seeing that, okay, Apollo's working when we're calling qualified numbers, it's working and getting results, then he just went ahead and he did buy a list. Now, lists can be expensive. I think he spent $40,000 on his list, which is not unheard of. Other people will use ZoomInfo, which is, I think, $20,000 for the year minimum. Lists are expensive and they're not always accurate. So it's a big investment. But for this client, because it was working for him, because he was getting some results out of Apollo, and because his ticket is pretty, it's high. It's around, I think, $25,000 starting off with him. If he buys that list and he gets at least 2 people, he's already made his money back. So he did pivot. So that's the thing. When you're working with anybody, especially if it's like a new department, like cold calling, which he wasn't doing that much of before, you're going to have to pivot, tweak, and adjust along the way. Maybe you're changing your script. Maybe you're changing who you're reaching out to. There's different things, but you should know going into this first 90 days, you are adjusting. So you never hire cold callers because you need a quick fix. Whenever someone comes to me and they are expecting their cold callers to hit ROIs within the first week or so, and they have to make their money back in the first month, it's always a red flag to me, because your sales and your revenue should not be dependent on offshore cold callers. That's not good. When you do it right, they will fill your funnel. But you don't want it to be your only solution to turning your sales around fast, because that probably means you have a lot of other issues. So anyways, I'm getting off topic. But the third thing that this client did is that he pivoted and he was okay with that. And now going into week 4, bam, the last call we had with him, he got those 25 appointments for his closers that were all really solid appointments. And now he is expanding. And that's kind of point number 4, which is the goal, that once you really invest in an offshore team, you expand. So here's what he's going to do. 1 out of the 3 SDRs, there's one that he already has mentioned has leadership experience, which we kind of knew that going into it. We love to give someone who has previous management into the interview. So that way, if the team grows, there's kind of a natural leader. And one of the girls he hired is just like that natural leader who is already helping and is just so on top of things. So he is making her more of a team leader, which means that as we start to hire more people for him, they will all kind of follow under her first. And that will make, again, his time more efficient, because maybe he doesn't have to spend an hour a day with them. Now he knows this person so well that she can help assist him with that and help kind of train and do some quality checks. But he's also going to start using our team members for his clients, because a lot of his clients need similar work. And so he's actually now hiring our cold callers and our lead gen to support his clients. And that's how good offshoring should look like. Good offshoring should look like you find a team, you support them, you train them, you invest in them, and then you slowly start to promote one or all of them to higher level tasks. And then you fill in behind them with more team members. And that's how you build an awesome, affordable team. And truly, I don't know, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but he's able to hire 4 or 5 team members offshore compared to the cost of one in the US. So he literally has an entire team who is so excited to work, who is so, I don't want to say desperate, but, at a point in their career where they want to be making more money, and working for a US company when you're based overseas is a great opportunity. So that's that. This is a short podcast episode because I just want to show you what good outsourcing looks like. And so if you are on the fence, maybe you've had a bad experience with overseas teams before, whether you hired them and it didn't go well, or maybe you've just had a bad call center experience. You can't write off global talent because you've had bad experiences, because there are business leaders who are having fantastic experiences. And this client that I mentioned is one of those. In fact, he's just one of our many clients who have had the exact same experience. You start with a couple reps, you train them, you pivot and tweak and adjust if needed, and then you continue to expand and grow with them. And that's like so exciting to me. Like that's win-win. That's like the magic behind all of this. So if you have any other questions about how do you set up an outsourced sales team that's doing appointment setting or cold calling, then feel free to always reach out to us. You can reach out to us on our website, by email, by LinkedIn. We look forward to connecting with you. But the takeaway from this is that offshore teams work when you set them up correctly. So that's that. That's a short episode today, but I hope this was helpful to anyone who's listening and really wants to grow their sales and build that sales pipeline out, because it is possible with offshore team members. In fact, it makes the most sense to with offshore team members, but you do have to invest and you do have to commit to making it work for a few months before you get to the magical part where you can expand and then build an entire team around the original team members that you hired. So thank you for listening to this episode. If you have an idea for another podcast episode or a question that you're really wondering, reach out. And of course, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a review for this podcast. If you find it helpful to understand how to hire offshore team members, or you want to support the cool mission we're doing, which is making more business leaders choose Africa for their next hire, then we would love a review. It means so much to us. Thanks for listening.